We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's May 18th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yun, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Kim Xiang.
Good morning, Yen.
Good morning. And Nao Song.
Hi, everyone.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. Let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. The first story, a major update to South Korea's military discipline is enforcement rules. The Defense Ministry will no longer class sexual acts between soldiers of the same sex as misconduct. This overturned what officials decided upon last November. Since then, human rights groups have demanded that it was discriminatory to include consensual sex among those of the same sex as something punishable. Next on, from January, drivers in Korea were obligated to stop when turning right at intersections to better protect pedestrians. But local media outlets found that despite the latest traffic law, the number of pedestrian deaths has actually doubled. Many believe it's because it's hard to catch drivers red-handed. It was only from last month that the grace period had been lifted and police have been out on the roads checking on drivers. To reduce the number of accidents, police have decided to extend their crackdown period to the 21st. Last but not least, if you're in Asia, you may have thought how hot it's been these days. Just like China and parts of Southeast Asia, Korea has also seen daily highs go up to 35 degrees Celsius. For the first time in 5 years, we've seen temperatures for mid-May go past 33 degrees. And according to the Korea Meteorological Administration, Seoul's afternoon temperatures are at what we would normally experience only towards the end of July and early August. Now, if we take a closer look at the last news item, we're seeing unusually high temperatures this time of the year, and weather analysts say that's because we're seeing high air pressure over the North Pacific. That's why temperatures are going high, as if we're seeing heat waves. Fortunately, though, it's not as humid, which is why we haven't seen nationwide heat wave alerts, and the KMA also predicts that we'll see temperatures drop from today. Now, other countries in Asia have also experienced record high temperatures, so here in the studio, what did you guys think about the weather being hotter than usual?
You know, I feel like I should be a little more concerned because global warming is a thing. It's a serious issue. But I am a little bit skeptical because every year they say that it's some sort of record-breaking heat, record-breaking cold, and you never know until it actually comes time for you to actually check it. But, you know, some reports are saying that it's going to rain most of July except for maybe like 3 days. So who knows what it will actually be. But, you know, I've kind of grown accustomed to the heat, so I'm okay with that, but just not the huge temperature gaps between the morning time and the evening because I never know what to wear.
Exactly. It does affect.
Because way to get a cold as well.
I know, for sure.
Change
Yeah.
difference.
What were your thoughts on this story?
Yeah, I mean, we did discuss this topic about the whole July with the KMA prediction, not the KMA prediction, the Microsoft Bing prediction a couple of days ago, and it is concerning. And funnily enough, it's going to be predicted to be the hottest May in 112 years in South Korea. Countries like Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, and China, as you've mentioned just now, have reached record high temperatures ever, with countries like Thailand having reached around even up to like 45 degrees and above.
That's so hot.
Which is extremely hot, and combined with the humidity, it feels probably up to 52 degrees Celsius or something like that, which is very alarming.
And that's why a lot of travelers are refraining from going to these countries because they don't want to be spending their vacation in a very humid and hot temperature, but we'll see how it all goes. Now, moving on to today's discussion topic, South Korea is a democracy, but it hasn't always been that way. South Korea's democracy was the result of the efforts and sacrifice of its citizens. On this day, some 40 years ago, a big democracy movement started in the city of Gwangju in Jeollanam-do province. And to find out more, take a look at the screen. People in many countries around the world have been and still are fighting for better democracy. South Korea is no exception. Early presidents came into power through military juntas, which suppressed or even killed opposing voices. One of the most well-known incidents where Koreans fought for democracy happened 43 years ago on this day. It's known as the May 18th Gwangju democratization movement. The head of power was ChunDoohwan, who sent the military to Gwangju to stomp out those who opposed his coup. Over the course of 10 days, 193 were killed. 65 still remain missing. Nearly 1,600 were arrested or tortured. Today, NewsGen aims to answer 3 questions. 1. What do millennials and Gen Z think about May 18th and the pro-democracy movement? 2. What do young people think about expressing their political voice or demands through demonstrations? 3. How have young people in other countries used South Korea's efforts for democracy as a blueprint? 43 years ago on this day, people came out onto the streets of Gwangju demanding democracy. Now, this is known as the May 18th Gwangju Democratization Movement. Demonstrators were mostly civilians and students, but they were ruthlessly beaten and some even killed by the military, despite participating in the movement peacefully. Now, this movement has influenced democracy movements in other countries. And Xiang, why don't you explain to us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely today is the 43rd anniversary of the May 18th Democratic Movement that took place in 1980. It has affected global democracy in many ways. First, May 18th began South Korea's continued efforts to uphold the true democratic values. We saw an increase in political awareness, activism, and a sense of civic engagement among the Korean population. The movement played a significant role in shaping the country's democratic culture, fostering a spirit of political participation and encouraging the defense of human rights.
Right.
Secondly, as well, it inspired democratization in Asia by exposing the repressive nature of military dictatorship and fighting for the much-needed change.
Right.
This inspired activists and pro-democracy movements in the Philippines, Taiwan, and more recently in Thailand we've seen, to challenge authoritarian regimes and create people-led democratic reforms. Lastly, it did also enhance international solidarity.
For sure.
May 18th received international media attention with the German journalist Jürgen Hinspeter reporting on the story. And it allowed now South Korea to become one of the model democracies around the world and gain media attention whenever South Korea has sort of a political movement or any activism by the civilians as well.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, that it's been a big issue worldwide, and a Harvard professor named Michael Sandel, who is the author of the book Justice, he mentioned that May 18th, the democratic movement was a source of inspiration for other nations towards democracy, and I'm so proud of that. And there's this aspect that is so interesting to me. The song called Marching for Our Beloved has been influencing other democratic movements around the world as it's being sung. First time it was being sung in Hong Kong was 1982. That's so early. And then even till the recent movement of 2019, this song called, Marching for Our Beloved has been sung, and changing lyrics in Taiwan, Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia, and it's making a big difference as a form of music, but there's various types of content about this movement as well. The Taxi Driver, great movie, recommend seeing it. 1987, and then this movie called 화려한 휴가, which in English is just May 18th, or 26 years. There's many different types of contents that's influencing people continuously.
Yeah, like the Taxi Driver is about Jürgen Hinspeter.
Yeah.
As well, so.
And thanks to this type of content, I think a lot of our generation, even though we weren't there to live the moment, we could actually, experience vicariously what it was like to be a part of this democratic movement. And as you both mentioned, the May 18th movement actually shaped how other countries are fighting for democracy. And that's still ongoing in a few places like Hong Kong and Myanmar. And we're actually going to connect to a human rights and women's rights advocate who was in prison for 7 years as a political prisoner in Myanmar. We'll shed light on her story right after this. Though it's been decades since South Koreans have shed blood in the fight for democracy, people are still making the sacrifice in Myanmar. Back in February 2021, the Myanmar military took power in a coup and since then have brutally cracked down on anyone opposing them. Hundreds of innocent civilians have been tortured and killed, and fighting for people's basic human rights was way new. She's previously spent 7 years as a political prisoner in Burma and emerged as a prominent advocate for equal rights and democracy. She's also the founder of the Women's Peace Network, fighting against political oppression and suppression. Welcome, Weiwei.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hello, Weiwei.
Yeah, hi.
All right, Weiwei, I'd like to ask you the first question. Tell us, what's the situation like in Myanmar right now?
Situations in Myanmar now is extremely distressing. We are witnessing a severe human rights and humanitarian catastrophe that is rapidly deteriorating by the minute. And most recently, we saw the devastations of Cyclone Mocha in the area, including Rakhine State, where there are reports that hundreds of Rohingya died. We are also hearing that the Burmese military is preventing the local and international assistance from reaching the affected areas. As a result, people have been left out without access to basic necessities like water, food for 3 days now. At the same time, the Burmese military committed atrocities of an increasing frequency and scale, both on the ground and from the air. And they are burning villages and burning people alive. And communities across the countries are being targeted with airstrikes. Just a month ago, we experienced a heart-wrenching massacre in Basiji, where at least 165 civilians were killed by the military's airstrikes. I guess despite this immense pressure, the people of Myanmar have stayed strong and resilient in our fight for democracy. This is also thanks to our clear visions of democracy, which we have learned from many successful revolutions around the world.
Yes, Weiwei, thank you for the inspiring. So I didn't know the situation was that bad, and it's good to hear from someone on the ground who's in Myanmar, who spent time in Myanmar, to tell us some of the atrocities of the military government. So, I mean, you've just mentioned about the Korea's democratic movement. Have you heard about the May 18th democratic movement before, and what did you think about it?
Yes, I'm familiar with the May 18th democratic movement, also known as the Gwangju Uprising. It is an incredibly inspiring event that resonates deeply with me and many others in Burmese pro-democracy movement. The Gwangju Uprising shares striking similarities with the current situations in Myanmar, such as the military coup, the emergence of strong youth leaderships, at the same time the unjust killing and atrocities committed, and a shared vision for a genuine democratic future. The courage and resilience displayed by the people during the Gwangju movement serves as a powerful reminder of the strength and determination we witness in Myanmar today. It is an inspiration to continue fighting for democracy and justice in our own country.
That's so great. I mean, my next question leads right into that. You were saying that it's so inspiring to see the democratic movement in Korea, but how do you think it worked maybe as a blueprint for the Myanmar democratic uprising?
Yeah, the May 18 movement, Gwangju Uprising, serves as a blueprint, I think, for Myanmar's pro-democracy uprising. Despite its violent nature, it played a significant role in bringing about change and establishing democracy in Korea today. So this inspires us in Myanmar as we see parallel between the struggles faced in both movements. The May 18 movement provides us with hope, reassurance that our sacrifices and hardship will ultimately be worthwhile. So it's worth noting that that our connection with Korea has led to strong solidarity from Korean civil society, further supporting the Burmese pro-democracy movement.
That's beautiful.
Definitely, and that's why a lot of Koreans, including myself, would like to share our support to everyone fighting for democracy currently in Myanmar. And I would like to ask you the last question. What does Myanmar desperately need right now? And would you like to tell the world through NewsGen what people are asking for?
Yeah, so what Myanmar desperately need right now is for people around the world to utilize their own democratic systems to help bring democracy to Myanmar. There are two crucial ways to support us. First, we urge you to contact your representative and urge them to take stronger actions against Myanmar military. This can include implementing sanctions and arms embargo on Burmese military. It is also important to hold accountable any companies that have businesses ties with the military in Burma, such as POSCO. Secondly, please extend your support to Burmese community in Korea, particularly ethnic minorities. Many of them are students who are organizing to support our pro-democracy movement from a distance. So the actions taken by Korean people will greatly strengthen our movement, just as your families and ancestors fought for democracy and achieved success. We believe that the people of Myanmar will also prevail. By spreading this message through news, Jan, we can raise awareness and mobilize collective effort toward supporting the democratic aspiration to the people of Myanmar.
Hopefully it does, because as you mentioned, back 43 years ago, a lot of youth, whether they were university students or people in their 20s and 30s, fought, and we saw so much bloodshed, and that's happening in Myanmar right now. So I think what's happening there really touches us on a different level.
Right.
Thank you so much, Wei Wei, for sharing your story today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now Wei Wei mentioned a lot of great points there. We heard about the situation in Myanmar, and we could see a parallel between similarities between what happened 43 years ago in Gwangju. What were your thoughts on that?
I think it's just so remarkable that it's always the youth sacrificing themselves, fighting for a better future. And, she was saying that it was inspiring to see the May 18th movement. But now I'm, on the other hand, inspired by that and how so many people are fighting for democracy. And I just can't imagine what kind of courage and, brave hearts can just stand up against that. But, my aunt, our family's from Gwangju, and she used to tell me that she would see on the way to school or on the way back, corpses or injured people being carried away on cots. So this is a recent movement, and I think it's definitely worth remembering and noting for everybody these days not really invested in maybe politics, but just to be more aware, this is what people fought for. It's something that has been given to us, but we should not take it for granted.
We should never take it for granted. And as Wei Wei mentioned, there are ways that we can help here in Korea. She also mentioned taking care of the ethnic minorities in Korea, right? What were your thoughts on that?
I think she meant more like the ethnic minorities, as in Burmese.
Yes,
yeah,
we could help.
Yeah, we do have some community in South Korea, as well as worldwide. I've actually had a few Burmese friends myself, and they've all been very strong people. They come out to different parts of the world with nothing from their country, basically as a refugee status. Some of them being sort of young student protesters and things like that, and they've always been displayed a level of courage as well. And Myanmar right now, back in 2021, I think Aung San Suu Kyi was detained again by the military. And that really caused a lot of havoc. That's, as why I mentioned, as why I think was this going airstrikes happening even on civilian grounds and things like that. Very, very heartbreaking, and something that shouldn't be happening in the 21st century. And I mean, South Korea as well did go through that. But I think times like these, democratic movement is something that isn't just about being brave. I think it's more about people realizing the need for change and having the courage to actually push forward. The time is there. It's not always about one or two people ruling the whole country like as if it's a kingdom or anything. That time has passed. It has to be a governance for the people.
Right.
Then I think I would like to ask you the next question. We're still seeing some young people like Weiwei or people in Myanmar risk their lives for this type of democracy. Then what do you think the youth or the new generation thinks about democratic movements in general?
Oh yeah, I think they're very positive. I think we'll be mostly getting the opinions of the youth from already democratized countries. I think that might be a bit of a flaw in the idea, first of all. And we had lots of cases, even recently. Algeria's 2019 Iraq movement, Lebanon, Belarus is still going. A lot of people are unhappy about the long-term ruling of Lukashenko. Hong Kong since 2019, and also in Thailand. We just had an election where Move Forward, a Democratic Party of Thailand, and the leader Peter Limjaroenrat won the most number of seats, 152 seats, just last Sunday. And we're going to see some change. Thailand, you might not have known, but they were a military government since 2014 as well. So democratic movements begin when there's continued injustice by the ruling government. It is a fight against corruption, inequality, and abuse of human rights. Democracy is not the most efficient political system, as I believe as well. However, it does allow room for fast change and fair game by the government for the people.
Right, so even though it's history here in Korea, the democratic movement, then we should keep remembering it. And on that note, I would like to now change gears to the last question. Here in Korea, the grandson of ChunDoohwan, the late military dictator and former president responsible for killing hundreds in the May 18th movement, recently visited South Korea. His name is ChunWoowon, and we covered news about ChunWoowon on NewsGen a few times. And back in March, he flew in from New York to Korea to apologize to the victims and their surviving families. And what did you think about that, starting with Nell?
I think his movement, his actions, it doesn't fix the root problems itself, but I do think that it is in the right direction, whether it be genuine or not. Going to these families and the families of victims, it does something emotional to them, and I think that it is the right step towards the right direction, but maybe not from the right person. He can't be representing his entire family, and even between them, there's a lot of conflict, obviously, as we see in media.
For sure, as you can see, you see ChunWoowon there going to Gwangju and apologizing to the victims. What are your thoughts on that?
To be honest, ChunWoowon fails to hold my attention. May 18th Gwangju Democratic Movement was a step towards a fair government by the people, for the people, away from the continued military coup d'etat following Park Chung-hee. 193 civilians, including students, office workers and farmers, lost their lives to ChunDoohwan's shoot-to-kill order to continue his authoritarian regime, which he unjustly acquired in the first place. By the end of his term in 1988, he extorted around $100 million from private companies to his personal pocket. This is the wealth that his grandson, ChunWoowon, has been living a luxurious lifestyle in both Korea and US from his entire life. It seems that he's almost participating in the game of politics these days, but simply put, ChunWoowon needs to be expedited through legal process for his confirmed use of illicit substances.
And actually, due to time, we couldn't really introduce what our global viewers had to say on this topic. But as you can hear, if you look at our community tab, you can see that a lot of people said that though his apology may seem to be sincere, he should never enter the political arena, as you mentioned before. And let's end up right here. We'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics that young people are talking about. And special thanks to Kim
My pleasure, yeah.
And Nelsong.
No problem.
All right, thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.